under the cultural methods now. And these cultural methods, as the name suggests, would refer to practices, things that farmers tend to do routinely, daily. Just like reggae music is a part of Jamaican culture. This is the type of music we would most likely select to be a part of, to venture in, to listen to, and so on. So these cultural methods sometimes begin even before the crop is planted. So in terms of site selection, not listed here, but just mentioning, you want to plant your crops where you know that the infestation or the threat of a particular pest is not present or is low. All right, land preparation as a means of pest management. What it does is that when you turn the soil over, it exposes certain soil organisms, that live in the soil that can harm your crops. So like some worms, it exposes them to their predators, like birds. It may be common for you to see where when a tractor is plowing a piece of land, you see a lot of white birds, or what we call garleys. So they are actually there to feed on whatever is exposed by just tilling the land. So the selection of planting material is another cultural method, because you do not want to introduce a particular pest into your cropping environment. Do this activity carefully so that if you avoid symptomatic plants, you avoid pests that you know of, and you can have a healthy crop. And that is where it will begin. Because if you start with a sick plant, the result will not get any better. Other cultural practices, irrigation management, water management, that is targeted with the drip irrigation technique. Now, this delivers the water straight to the root zone where it can be used by the crop plant. Notice in the picture that this area along where the crop is planted is wet, and the inter rows here, in the rows here, it is noticeably dry. And this is what it does. So when there's no water in these areas, weed cannot grow, because it also need, they are plants, they also need water to strive, right? So it does not facilitate or encourage water to be everywhere. So you create that condition that increase the threat of disease development. You know, microorganisms that cause disease, they like a moist environment. So when you don't have water everywhere, it's very limiting in terms of their development. So this is how, when you manage your irrigation, your water, this is what you want to do. You want to put it where it is most required, and limit those organisms that depend on it also. Now, fertilizer, nutrition is very important in terms of management, because the more healthy a plant is, the more it is able to withstand or outgrow the pest, grow away from the pest pressure. So it can, when it is healthy, getting everything it needs, getting all the nutrients it needs, it can be better able to withstand the pressure if it comes down with it, or grow away from it. Weed management, as mentioned before, weeds, because it robs the space and the light, right? You will have it creating a microclimate that is good for disease development. Microorganisms love moisture. So when you have weeds with the crop plants, it crowds them. If it rains, the water cannot dry out fast enough. So it creates that condition that organisms love to thrive in, and organisms that will cause disease for your crops. So weed management as a cultural practice is very important. Other cultural methods, where we use trap crop And normally we use corn because corn is available. And we normally use corn where we have a threat, like this kind of barrier, this trap crop as a barrier where we have a threat of viruses, because some insects carry viruses, and that can be limiting, very limiting to the crop in terms of reaching its yield and its potential optimally. Right, so what it does is that when you have this trap crop, the insects, aphids, the whiteflies, they come and they feed on the corn. So normally they tend to carry the virus on their mouth part. When they come and they feed on the corn, it is easier to remove the viral load from their mouth part if they eventually reach into the crop. And we normally use it for crops like hot pepper, particularly Scotch bonnet pepper. All right, so these are very susceptible to viruses. And when we use crops to trap insects, it reduces the threat. Now, as a cultural method, planting dates and scheduling your crops, basically knowing when the particular pest will strike and avoiding planting or reaping in those times. Because we know that insect pests love summer months because the temperature is higher and their population tend to increase in that time. So if you know that, you want to not plant where your crop is growing and will be limited by the pest in that time. So you can choose to plant in months when the threat is not so much. Crop rotation. Now, crops within the same family will attract the same pests. So it is very good information for you to know, because like sweet peppers, Irish potato, tomatoes that you're seeing in this year one. All right, this is from the Solanaceae family. So the sweet pepper, the tomato, and the Irish potato will have the same pest feeding on them. So imagine you plant these crops in year one and you go back again with these crops in year two, and you have the pest problem. What will happen is that the continuous food source, the supply is great for the pest to grow and multiply. You will have more problems in the second year, right? However, if you decide not to plant these crops in year two, you plant something of a different family. Your carrot is the different family, right? What it does, it breaks the cycle of the pests. So some of the pests will die out naturally because they starve to death, right? So, and this is why you try to, in terms of pest management, you try to use or plant different crops within the different families to break the cycle of pests. Also, it also helps with nutrition management in terms of soil fertility, because different crop plants will require different nutrients at different levels of the soil. So it is a very important practice